Hello everybody and welcome back to the Roastico YouTube channel. If you saw my previous video, you will know that we picked this up not too long ago. This is my Kawasaki Z125. Tiny little mini moto. Super fun. Love taking it around the city. And today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be installing some mods. First set of mods. So, first thing is I really hate these mirrors, so we're going to be ripping those off. I really hate these big floppy heavy incandescent blinkers, so we're going to be ripping those off and replacing them with some flush mount LEDs. And then this entire tail section is going to go. We're going to rip it out. We're going to be replacing this rear light right here with something a little bit better. We're also going to be replacing this stock halogen headlight with an LED. I don't have a replacement for the city light yet, but that'll be coming in the future. So let's get right into it. Alright, so first things first, we're going to go ahead and put the Z125 on the motorcycle stand, just so that it's a little bit easier to work on it. And that can be done pretty easily. Really just gotta get it lined up in the right spot. Right there. Boom. Okay, so next we're gonna go ahead and straighten these bars out, and I'm gonna be ripping off these old mirrors. You're gonna be needing a 14mm wrench to get those off. Nice and easy. Alright, next I'm going to be taking off these bar ends. I'm not going to be getting it on camera, but what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get a set of pliers or something that you can use to grip the end of this, and you're going to twist and pull it. Just work it out of the end of the bar. Should be pretty easy. Okay, next thing to do would be to take this seat off, and luckily it's pretty easy. There's just a key cylinder right down there. You stick the key in it and turn, and then you can pop the seat right off. So we're gonna go ahead and stick our key in there, turn it, and then this will come right out, just like that. Boom. Now that we've got the tank off, that exposes the entire underside here. So we've got our ECU, our flasher relay, some fuses, starter relay, battery, and essentially from this point we're going to be stripping out all of the body panels, and exposing everything from the tank back. I would highly suggest you get yourself some some magnetic parts plates. Got some O'Reilly's ones here. We've got an OEM Tools one. Really, any of them should work. You just kind of want to keep track of where you're pulling these body panel screws out of so that you can put the bike back together. Alright, I've got the bike stripped down. From here, I'm going to have to wait for more parts to come in to do anything at the rear. So we're going to start work on the front and replace the headlight. Now to take the headlight out, I don't know if you can see this, but back here, behind the clutch cable, there's a little hex. You need to take that out, and there's one on the other side, and then the entire thing will fold forward, and you can pop it off its grommets and take it off.
Changing a halogen headlight is going to be pretty much the same on every single motorcycle. What you need to do is expose the headlight lens. On the back of it will be a 3-prong plug connected to the headlight bulb. You need to separate this plug from the bulb, and because it's such an antiquated design, it can be somewhat difficult to get it separated. So using firm but controlled pressure, separate the plug from the bulb. Once separated, most headlights will have a weather stripping type grommet protecting the lens from filling with water. Take it off. Then you will find the retaining mechanism. On most bikes, this will be a simple clip made out of a bent wire of spring steel. In that case, all you need to do is push down on the end of the retainer, move the end so that it clears the retaining hook, and then it will fold away, exposing the bulb and allowing you to remove it. The bulb is keyed using 3 tabs. You must line up the replacement bulb with these tab locations, otherwise you may not be able to secure the bulb to the housing, or if you can secure it, the bulb won't be in the correct orientation to achieve the desired beam pattern. H4 light bulbs are dual filament bulbs, but toggling the high beam doesn't actually make the headlight any brighter. What it does is change the beam pattern to throw light in a straighter, narrower arc. This is dependent on the bulb's orientation within the lens, which is why it's important to take note of the orientation before and after installation. H4 style bulbs are prevalent on older motorcycles, and especially cheap motorcycles like the Z125, made in Japan and the United States. Be sure to check what kind of bulb your motorcycle accepts before ordering an LED replacement. A note on LED usage for roads. The H4 standard is technically only halogen. Xenon, argon, HID, and LED drop-in replacements could potentially violate local laws and ordinances. Is local law enforcement going to pull you over for a bright headlight? Probably not, but it could be an additional traffic violation added onto a ticket if you are pulled over.
Alright, after a little bit of difficulty, I was able to get that LED headlight installed. So as you see, the city light is what's running right now, but when we actually turn over the bike and get it to run, LED comes on, and it's quite bright. Now I'm gonna have to wait around a little bit more for more parts to come in. I will pick back up when that happens. Alright, I've got all the new parts here. We've got turn signals for the front. We've got a new rear light with integrated turn signals. Gonna have to figure out the wiring for that. And then we've got new bar end mirrors. So this should be a pretty straightforward installation. I'm gonna mostly be using Wago connections wrapped in electrical tape. It'll get the job done. But yeah, I gotta figure out the wiring on this, so I will get back to you later.
When performing a replacement on a stock light or turn signal, you'll be faced with 2 options, drop-in and universal. Drop-in replacements are as easy as an install can get. You simply locate and disconnect the pigtail/wiring harness from its connection to the electrical system of the motorcycle, then plug in the drop-in replacement and reinstall. Universal lights require splicing. This can be done one of 3 ways. You can hardwire the motorcycle, meaning the connection is permanent and cannot be disassembled. This is serviceable for tight locations, in areas you know the light won't need to be detached to work on the bike, or on motorcycles that came from the factory with hardwired lights. You can wire in new generic pigtails. This involves removing both sides of the factory harness and replacing the connection with one assembled by you. This is serviceable for motorcycles with wiring issues, damaged connectors, or if the factory wiring harness wouldn't allow you to splice the wires you're attempting to splice. Or, you can do what I did for this installation and salvage the factory harness from the old component, splice the new light to the factory harness, and reinstall. This ensures the factory connection is kept if you would like to revert your modifications in the future, and cuts down on the amount of splicing required to complete the mod. As with any kind of electrical work on a motorcycle, you will need a multimeter with the ability to read low voltage DC. And if you would like to be as safe as possible, disconnect the positive terminal of the battery once you're ready to install. If you're installing a different set of incandescent bulbs rather than LED, polarity doesn't need to be considered as much. But LEDs are polar components and must be wired correctly in order to function. This is what we will use the multimeter for. Set the multimeter to DC in the tens range. The meter should read 0.00 when no voltage is applied. Next, disconnect the turn signal from the factory harness and probe the end of the connection that is part of the motorcycle's electrical system. When the ignition is on, you may see a small amount of current, 0.05 volts or less, on the line. This can be used to tell yourself that you are actually touching the pins with your multimeter probes. Then, activate the light, usually by turning on the turn signal. If you read plus 12 volts DC, then congrats! You've made a good connection and are reading typical voltage. If you read positive voltage, but it isn't making it all the way to 12, this could be expected for turn signals, since the line goes from plus 12 volts DC to 0 volts DC 60 to 80 times per minute. If the voltage reads negative, this means the probes are a reverse polarity. In this case, the black probe is what is making contact with the positive side of the circuit. Make note of this, as you will need the wires on your replacement indicator to match the polarity of the wires coming out of the bike. Working on your motorcycle's electrical system can be intimidating, but it's very unlikely you will damage the motorcycle if you get something wrong. In the majority of cases, having the light wired up in the reverse will simply cause it to not work. Just switch the wires around and test again. Patience and confidence is key. Wiring up the taillight was much more complicated. First, you have to use the multimeter to probe the wiring harness for the taillight itself. Take note of the color of the wire that was going to the ground/negative side when you were replacing the indicators, as that will be the same color as the ground wire on the taillight harness. Turn the ignition on and put the negative probe of your multimeter on the ground wire, using the positive probe on the other two wires. Find the wire that is reading plus 12 volts when there are no brake inputs being made. This is the line that controls the running light. Then, place your positive probe onto the other wire. It should read 0. Then, reach around and press a brake input, or have a friend do it. The line should now read plus 12 volts. Make note of the location and color of these wires. If you're installing an integrated taillight, that is a taillight with turn signals built into it, you'll notice 2 additional wires coming out of the taillight. These are the positive sides for your rear turn signals. The entire light is using a common ground wire, so these will not have negatives. Now, you can simply connect these positive wires to the positive sides of your rear indicator using harnesses to achieve functionality. But due to the design of the Z125, only providing LEDs to the system will cause the flashing function to stop working. In this case, you either have to splice in resistors on each light, order a specialty part to splice into the original wire coming from the hand control, or what I did, which was keep 2 of the factory lights installed. In this configuration, it will flash faster than the factory lights, but I honestly don't mind it. In order to keep the factory rear indicators, I had to use a bus connection for the positive side, which is a splice that splits one input into multiple. This is more difficult if you are using a traditional solder splicing technique rather than a splicer like a Wago connector. The negative side of the factory harness was spliced into the factory taillights only since the taillight uses a common ground for the indicators.
We got everything wired up now. Got our Wago connections all taped up. Check out this new rear light with the tail tidy. Alright, we've got the bike all put back together. Everything went on without a hitch. Everything's looking good. Last thing to do is put those bar end mirrors on. Super bright headlight. And that new tail light. You want to hit the brakes? And you want to hit the blinker for me?
Wait, is there hazards?
No.
Great.
Hell yeah.